Hello. So my name's Sean. I'm an iOS developer, indie iOS developer and designer, and I work on an app called Sofa that helps you to be more intentional with your downtime. And in this video, I'm going to answer a question I got on YouTube the other day. And the question was, how did you approach marketing in the beginning of making the app, and the app being Sofa? And if you don't know, just a little context, I've been working on Sofa since 2017 as like the sole developer and everything. So, and I now do it full time. It's now my full-time job. So, there's a lot of stuff in regards to marketing that I've kind of learned over the years and stuff. So anyway, but let's get into this. So I'm going to break this down a little bit into a few different sections, but let's talk about what I did at the beginning of this. So at the very beginning, Sofa came out in 2017. And at the time, no one knew who I was. No one knew who Sofa was. And getting attention was very hard. And I would say is still very hard. And I want to caveat some of this stuff is like this, not all this stuff is really advice. I'm not like advising you to do these things. This is more, I'm sharing my experience with this stuff, and, take the stuff that makes sense for you and use it, and anything that doesn't, just ignore it and kind of go with that. So what did I do at the beginning? First thing I did was I reached out to blogs, people online. This was like probably, I would say like the heyday of Twitter, when Twitter was like nice. And you could reach out to people fairly easily and get responses and stuff. I would email people. And this is like, I wasn't just doing this to random people. This was like blogs and stuff related to the Apple world, the tech world. I would email people, reach out on Twitter, that kind of stuff. And most people never responded, never got back. Some people did. And I would say, when you're doing that kind of stuff, like don't expect responses, just kind of, target people with a good message, be mindful that they are probably very busy, and then, hope for the best. But that's one of the things I did. And most of the time, I didn't get any response, but sometimes I did, which was great. The other thing I did is I made YouTube videos, and if you look back at this channel and some of the very first videos I did, they were pretty rough. But I always had this idea of like, hey, I'm just going to kind of document this stuff and do this kind of behind the scenes thing and just kind of share what I'm working on, because I think it's interesting. And I think over time, it kind of builds and tells this interesting story. And making YouTube videos, I would say even today, is just a little bit harder than writing stuff on social media or writing a blog post or something like that. Like, not to take away from any of those things, but I think making a YouTube video is just a little bit more effort, and I think can make you stand out a little bit. So, and I love YouTube, and I actually love making videos, so it was kind of easy. The other thing I did at the beginning was I just made it as easy as possible for users of Sofa to get in touch with me. So in the app, I always had like an email link, so they could very easily send me an email. I was available on different social platforms and stuff. And I think customer support is kind of an underrated or an overlooked part of marketing, where you feel like, well, it's customer support, so it's a very distinct part of the business. But I actually think any interaction with a current customer or a potential customer is a form of marketing. And sometimes those are paid things, and sometimes it's free, right? It's just, you pay with your time as opposed to money. And a customer support response is actually interesting because you have people who care enough to write in because they either want to see something added to the app, they like what you have now and they want to see something additional added, or they have some kind of problem. And that may sound bad, but it actually is a way to show that you listen, and then if you fix the problem in a somewhat timely way, that can be a good way to kind of build a stronger relationship and show that, hey, I'm invested in this. You should be invested in this too, because I'm going to be working on this going forward. And I think another thing with the marketing stuff is, and I've done this where, say someone requests a feature and then I don't add that for like a year or maybe more. But when I do add it, I'll actually go back, and it's actually getting harder now because the volume of requests. But early on, I would send follow-up emails even like a year later saying, hey, I just added this feature if you want to check it out, with a link, all that kind of stuff. And that always got like very positive responses. People saying like, wow, you remember to send me an email follow-up. And like I said, that's getting harder now because the volume of email I'm getting is larger, but I still try and do that as much as I can. But yeah, I think customer support's kind of an underrated way. And you just have to put your time in. That's it, and make yourself available. So that's how I started, but it has evolved over time, right? So, as the app has grown, as it started to make money, I've been able to adjust and adapt the way that I've marketed stuff. So the one thing I do continue doing is I do still reach out to people in the industry. So when I have something new for Sofa that I think is worth talking about, worth sharing, I will reach out to different people, in kind of the Apple sphere or the tech sphere, and let them know what's going on. And I never expect those people to, number one, respond. I never expect them to cover Sofa in any way, like to write a blog post or talk about it on a podcast or YouTube channel. But I also understand their side of the business too, which is, if you see someone who's running a website or has a podcast or a YouTube channel that talks about this kind of stuff, they're always looking for things to talk about, right? Like whether it's new topics, new technologies, new apps. And by you reaching out to them, that's not really a burden in a way, as long as you do it politely. And if it makes sense for them to talk about, like, maybe they will. And it doesn't hurt to just send an email. So anyway, I still do that all the time, still reach out to people. So the other thing I started doing is paid marketing. And I'm going to make a separate video talking about the paid stuff a little bit more detail. But I've done paid marketing for podcasts, websites, and YouTube channels. And I found it to be, I think, a very effective way and just kind of a necessary thing, right? Like, there's so many apps, there's so many things in the world, and there's so many things every day like competing for attention. And even as Sofa's grown and more people know about it, most people don't know about it. And to get access to certain groups of people or certain audiences, paying for that access is just kind of necessary. It's just kind of the way it is. And I'm okay with that. And, just kind of budgeting that stuff in and factoring it in. And like I said, I'm going to be talking about that in more detail in a different video. But I have started to pay for, marketing in different ways. And I've actually found it to be kind of nice. The other thing I've done, which has been nice, is I've run sales and giveaways. So at different times I've done sales. 2 years in a row I've done a Black Friday sale and like Cyber Monday stuff. And then when I launched Sofa 4.0, I did a sale along with that as well. And I have personally found that sales are a much better tool for me than running like a free trial for people for like, I don't know, a week or 30 days. Giving people like, hey, get half off the annual plan and really like use this thing for a year. I've actually found it to be a lot more effective for what my product is and what I do. That may vary for for yourself and your app, but I've found that doing sales every now and then, not all the time, can be a nice way to do it. and Monica's about to jump on the desk. Don't do it. Oh, hold on. Look at this. I mean, she's really cute, but she's kind of insane sometimes. All right. Now, what would I do differently if I was kind of starting this today? Say I was starting from zero today. Like, how would I do this differently? I think early on, especially when I was starting to think about the paid stuff specifically, I think I was a little too worried about like the initial conversion of like, oh, I'm going to sponsor this podcast and I want to track the conversion like this month, right? Or, within a certain time frame. And actually, I quickly like got out of that mindset because number one, tracking those kind of conversions is pretty hard. And even like I did have ways of tracking it, but it's, there's a lot of nuance to how that stuff happens. And just because people signed up during a certain period of time that I was running an ad, it doesn't mean that the ad had any effect on that immediate person. And people can, hear about Sofa, 4 times and not sign up. And then the 5th time they hear about it, they go, yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. So there's so much nuance when it comes to this stuff. And I'm very glad that I quickly like got out of the mindset of the direct conversion and like the ROI of a single sponsorship. I think, and again, I'll talk about this more in another video, but I think the more holistic view of building awareness for the product and the brand is really the focus. And that's where most of my energy's been with all of this stuff. And I think if I just focus on that exclusively from the beginning, as opposed to like, I had a tiny period of time where I was focused on like the initial conversion, I think that would have been better. I do also wish I was more consistent on YouTube. I've been doing YouTube for a while now, and I've had periods where like I make a bunch of videos, then I kind of fall off for a little bit, then I make a bunch of videos, fall off. It is a very hard thing to be consistent with. I've talked about this in other videos too. But I do think it's such a great form of marketing for Sofa and like the stuff I work on, because there's something about like seeing someone, hearing them as if you compare this to reading a blog post or just reading, messages on like Threads or, Blue Sky or whatever stuff you're on. I think this is just like a more intimate way to talk to people and communicate and just share ideas. And it allows space for context and nuance where like, if I'm limited to 500 characters, I can only say so many things and share so many details. But like here, I can be way more loose. I don't have to, I know there's a lot of different approaches to YouTube where like, you edit for retention and stuff like that. But I feel like the more I do YouTube, the more I'm treating it just like a video podcast, where I listen to podcasts that are like hours long and I love it. Like I love the looseness of it. It feels like we're just kind of hanging out. And so I'm just kind of listening to a conversation. So I wish I was a little more consistent with YouTube at the beginning. I'm not gonna like beat myself up over it because that's life. And I use that time to put towards Sofa. So it's not like I was just kind of hanging out, not doing anything. But I wish I put a little bit more consistency into YouTube over those years, as opposed to, the unbalanced way I was doing it. So, okay, so that is it. So hopefully that's interesting. If you have any follow-up questions, just put them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them, or maybe do another video follow-up, that kind of stuff. But if you're interested in checking out my app, Sofa, you can head over to the App Store and search Sofa in there. I do also have a link in the description, so you can just click that and it'll take you right to there. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.